When we were kids, this tree here, this big cottonwood, that was only the size that my little finger is now. I remember when it first started to grow. It's sort of a measurement for me of the passage of time.
Bruce had a real knack for being with older people. He was interested in what they had to tell him.
His ancestors were all leaders and were all spiritual teachers themselves.
He says that the tree people, in essence, are our grandparents, and they, in their wisdom and their difficult experiences, made the world a better place for us, just as Bruce and some of the elders are making for this next generation of children.
Some of us write our names on walls. Some of us write our names on rocks in the mountains. Some of us carve our names on trees. The thing that lies inside of all of us is our chance for some kind of immortality. My name is Subi-ai. My sense of immortality incorporates the knowledge that I want to leave behind. When we hold on to our ancient traditional customs and language, we remain intact like a rainforest that has all kinds of things to offer. And the roots that hold us together is our knowledge and practicing the ways of our ancestral teachings. Spring is the time of rebirth. The dogwood blossoms bloom, and just by their blooming announce to us that our shellfish, our butter clams, our little neck clams are at their prime for gathering and preserving for future use. The blooming of the dogwood trees announces that all of the deer and all the elk young have been born now. They announce it's time for all the animals to move back up to the higher altitudes to partake in the things that grow there. They announce to the human beings that it's time to gather things. It's the time of gathering cedar bark.
Today was a special day. I got to spend the day with my Uncle Bruce Miller.
You guys see the yellow cedars?
Yellow cedar. He was showing me the technique of harvesting red cedar.
At this time, I'm creating some cedar mats that will end up in another home for the education of the public. Mats were a common, ordinary item long ago, but now are a rarity and very valued.
That one looks like it's already been harvested, Uncle. See the scar on it? Here. Look at where they started the bases too.
Yeah, somebody did.
An old harvest?
Yep, at least 10 years ago. It takes a large quantity of prime cedar to make a mat. Yeah, we like to use the bark from young trees for that. That one's a perfect size. And that's probably the last time I'll participate in mat making because it takes so much material.
The time that we spend together, it's always fun. It's always entertaining, which is one of the teaching tools that he has. It's all hands-on. There's very little books.
Be careful.
It's a little bit early in the season yet, and it's not a very warm day. Mm-hmm. So chances are the sap on that tree over there is flowing.
There's a number of treasures that Uncle Bruce retains mentally, and unfortunately I don't have the ability to learn them all.
We'd want to try to get it here.
So I have a select few subjects that I'm interested in. Working with cedar is one of them.
Can you get in there with it now? Don't teach all of our children exactly the same thing. If you teach them everything all the same, they won't need one another.
Down the hill.
And the world will split apart. Within the teachings of the tree people comes what we call Sequalaluk, the teaching of the grandmother cedar tree. With her teaching, as human beings on this earth, we learn patience, generosity, flexibility, the ability to stand there and live through change after change. We could have, as a race of people, given up our language completely, given up our culture, given up our oral tradition, given up our teaching, and become part of mainstream America with no background or no history. But we chose to persevere against all the traumatic obstacles set before us as a race of people.
Very nice. I consider myself a very fortunate man to be able to spend the time that I have with him, and I love him very much. I only hope that the knowledge that I retain, I will be able to pass on to another family member that I have. I hope I can do him justice by learning what he has to offer me. Very nice.
Hit the road, Jack.
I got pitchy on that one. The first one I didn't get pitchy on.
In some cases, the older people stopped teaching in order to help their children survive. Children were sent off to boarding schools. Even at Skokomish, there was a boarding school on the reservation that the Skokomish children went to. They were away from their parents, so they didn't have that kind of contact with their mothers or fathers, where they were learning on a daily basis. So there was this break in knowledge.
This estrangement really facilitated the demise of the culture. And so Coast Salish art has really had a very long hiatus. And it is through the efforts of Bruce Miller and other people that the style that was unique and indigenous to this region is now coming forward.
He's honest. I can trust him to continue to teach the young people who come to him as students, and he will teach them well. He carries within himself a lot of discipline to carry and teach the things that are important for the culture to live.
One of my valuable mentors is Tokshablu by Hilbert.
I am the only child of Louise and Charlie Anderson, who were Upper Skagit traditional people. Born in 1918, loved to beat that age.
I look forward to every time I get a chance to share time with Tokshablu.
He's my pet. He is my pet. I call him that lovingly.
Hi, Fran. It's great to see you. Another year passed by. Hi, Elaine.
The moment Bruce comes in, why there is a different feeling that comes into the room, and that lets me know, oh, Sube, one of our best spiritual teachers, has arrived.
He took it on to teach more people how to gather. He took it on in terms of teaching more people how to prepare and process the raw materials. And now there's a very successful association of Northwest weavers. But there was year after year after year when he was the only one making a basket, the only one gathering material. There was nobody else.
This man ignores the fact that there is anything physically disabling about his body.
You know, sometimes his health is failing him. And I remember one time he had a stroke. He actually lost parts of his memory, feelings, and stuff like that.
We hope that the Creator gives him many more years to be a teacher.
I was born in Skokomish on April 23rd, 1944, the 15th child of my mother and father, Fred Miller and Georgia Miller. I grew up in my grandparents' home in what was a traditional extended family that consisted of my maternal grandparents, a maternal granduncle, a paternal granduncle, my 14 brothers and sisters, and a varying number of cousins. I grew up at a time when my great grandmother was still alive and lived with walking distance from my house. And during the time of the leaves changing, we would go down to her house to listen to the stories of our old people. My Aunt Emily was who I asked if she'd show me how to make a basket. That was before I was 10 years old. And she said, I'm not going to show you anything until you gather me some material. And at that time, you actually only had to go across from the little house she lived in and down by the marsh where she lived in to gather material. Now none grows there at all. That's how much the environment changed in the course of my adolescent years to my adult years. Some plants and things disappeared from the region, period. We lost an interest of what the plant people had to say to us. We lost an interest in what the environment had to say to us. It's beginning to awaken now. We see the rainforest vanishing before our eyes. We see the water that reflected the path of life become so polluted we can't even swim in it. And the environment has been trying to tell us. The air has been trying to tell us. The water has been trying to tell us, listen to us. We see the salmon people diminish. We look in other areas of the world and seeing one tribe trying to kill another, one nation trying to exterminate another because they've treated the land in such a way that it can't produce enough to feed everybody anymore. And we become a victim of erosion. Summer's broken up to many choruses, to many refrains. The time of picking bear grass, the time of picking salmon berries, the time of blackberries, the time of Indian plums. Summertime was the time of travel, was the time of experience other cultures, other activities. We traveled to distant tribes to watch, to see what they did. Time to do things outside.
My name is Maria Elohimo, and I have been involved with this garden since it was a dream.
She asked me if I'd be interested in doing some work with her on the studying of Aboriginal medicinal plants, and I said, that I would be. And then that year, about 8 years ago, maybe 9 now, it became a collaborative effort with Maria's class in the Evergreen State College.
We started with the circle bed and moved to the center bed, to creating a wetland, a prairie, a dye garden, cultivation gardens for vegetables.
We decided at that time to call it Sayuyai. Sayuyai means the medicine of the plant people. Hi, I'm Bruce. It's good to see you.
Did you say crap?
One time, everything we needed was given to us by the plant people. The forest was our Walmart. It was our pharmaceutical store, our medicine, our food, the dyes, the cosmetics, the plants to beautify. They were all here. We didn't have to go to the store to buy them. Watch your step. We see the maidenhair fern here. The plant, dried and chewed up, was packed into spear wounds and stab wounds and great wounds that swells the bleeding shut so you don't bleed to death so fast. It was used for bleeding ulcers, internal bleeding. So I'll go up this way a little way. Oops.
Is Devil's Club native to this area?
It grows all the way along the coast, I think, all the way up to Alaska, down to California. We use it here for our Black Secret Society paint, the charcoal. We use it to make a tea to help lower blood sugar. Some people use it for high blood pressure. This is our endocrine system section here. It covers problems with the liver, pancreas, and digestive system. We're all aware of the high rate of diabetes with Native Americans. Many of us who maintain lawns are constantly in a battle to get rid of things that we consider weeds. Well, these weeds happen to be a very important medicine for our ancestors who had these diabetic problems. When I realized that I was acute diabetic and I experienced all the peripheral effects such as on the kidneys and on the heart and neuropathy and circulatory problems and amputations. Over here we have the Cascade huckleberries. We gathered those to make the tea. The medicine is called inulin. Blueberries, huckleberries, and dandelions are all high in an element we call inulin that helps our body to process sugar. To this day, I use plant medicines along with the insulin I take to help stabilize my system, and I firmly believe that's why I'm still here.
One of the things that is so remarkable about this garden is the way that it merges traditions. It draws upon the very specific knowledge that Bruce carries within his Twana tradition and knowledge from Western herbalism.
Bruce's garden resurrects the old knowledge of plant life because not only does it teach youngsters to be good stewards of the environment, but it gives them the experience of being in nature very intimately, getting dirty and digging up plants from the roots and knowing how they change. And I see this as another part of Bruce putting together this picture that I think will eventually be a whole one.
To me, the garden is like Bruce. He brings in the whole world into the garden.
My elder from Vancouver Island said, look at the hills, what do you see? And I said, oh, that was the easy answer, the forest. The trees are there. And he said, well, that's exactly the answer 90% of the people would give you. But what you see there is the oldest teaching since creation. He said, it's the teaching of the tree people. He said, you look up there and you say you see trees, but what you see is many nations of trees living side by side from the beginning of time in harmony. We were told in this teaching that we were never to infringe on the diversity of the forest. We need to respect all the things that the other races of people have contributed to this earth. Not to look for the differences, but to look for the things that we have in common. This will keep the earth in harmony. We're going to go into my house for a minute. Whoever wants to look at my little weaving I'm doing, you get to come in my secret chamber.
Oh, good.
Come on in. Although this is a contemporary loom, this is all still has to be done by hand, stitch by stitch.
What are you making now?
I'm making a blanket for Stonington Gallery. The theme of the blanket is called Cloudberries. And then after I get the border about this wide, then I go into the Salish twill weave. This one here is St. John's wort. It's a plant that grows out in the ditches here. You can, it don't bite, so you can handle it and rub it on your face. This is a dye made from black moss. We usually eat it, and it has a mild licorice flavor, pudding. And this was an experimental one this season. It's red rhododendron flowers. But that's what color it came out.
Wow, that's nice. Can you boil the flowers?
Yeah. We're going to get our picture taken, everybody.
Sit behind you two dogs.
I didn't realize he's so
If I take
tall.
my leg off, I'm only 5'6". I took a lot of things for granted in my young life because I saw things that are now a rarity. I saw them every day. I saw baskets that had been in our family for up to 8 generations. I saw dog hair and mountain goat blankets. I listened to the speech of Puget, Salish, and Tawana without ever giving it a second thought. But all of this began to disappear while I was experiencing life on the outside. I experienced life off the reservation, life in the colleges and the universities, life in the military. I experienced life in war. And I experienced drama on the stage.
He knew with what to do with music. He knew with what to do with dance. He knew what to do to make a beautiful scene on the stage. He knew all these things. He was the embodiment of what we like to think theater should be. He was invited to join our troupe, and is a world-famous company. Peter Brook was very interested in Bruce. Bruce was here when Robert Wilson was here. He was here when Philip Glass was here. He was here when Tom O'Horgan, who directed Hair for Broadway, was here. Sam Shepard, Bette Midler, Harvey Keitel. He was with his peers. He made an invaluable contribution.
I had a fulfilling life in the Native American theater in New York. I had a fulfilling life in artistic achievements. I became well known as an artist, well known as an actor, but I was not happy. Now that I was living on the outside, I saw the true value of life back here on the reservation.
He had to make a choice, I think. He had roots. He had family. He had history. He knew who he was. And I'm sure that's what brought him back, is this self-awareness.
We all were very sad, but you must know, as I say, he's a spiritual person and he's the spiritual leader of his tribe, and his tribe needed him to come home.
And one day, I just left. And I came back to the reservation, and I've been here ever since. Can you get in at those?
Yeah.
We don't need a lot like the last time.
My name is Edwin Pullen. I come from La Push. After I got initiated, Bruce told me that I'm gonna stay so that he could teach me. And I said, okay. And I haven't left yet. Today, Bruce wanted to show me how to dye the cedar using the inside of the alder bark.
That'll be enough for what we're going to do today. We need to get back and prepare this immediately. Time is an all-important factor in preparing of the alder bark dye.
The sooner that you use the inside of the alder bark, the brighter red the cedar bark will turn out.
We can see it's beginning to take color already, although this is what we're going to use to make orange dye today. The bark has other properties. One is a tumor-reducing medicine. The other one is an anti-streptococcus medicine. And another use is the juice of this is to neutralize the itching of mosquito bites, etc. We call this Palsiti tlawakai, the bark of the alder tree. And tlawakai means wood to cook with. And in the old longhouses, alder doesn't emit sparks that fly into the air that give a greater chance of the longhouses burning down, so that was the preferred cooking wood, also for its flavors. Now we need to get this ready. I think that needs to be split. We want to dye just the inner part. When I was first trained to do this part, the particular ant that I was working with was more innovative than my other grand ant. And I had been to a garage sale and found a second-hand blender, and I asked her if she ever thought of grinding this up some other way, and she said, no, but we'll try it. And miracle of miracles, we found a new way to process alder bark.
Today we're modern Indians now, and we have the luxury of the blender.
Here's our saliva substitute.
So we blended up the alder bark.
To give a little boost, we give it liquid sun.
And we used ammonia to bring out the color.
And this gets the process of going here. We get a better chemical reaction when we use just the inner layer of the bark.
All my life I wanted a grandfather. Someone who would teach me.
Then we strike while the sun is hot.
Bruce has taken me by his side and made me feel a sense of belonging.
As soon as the sun strikes this, it should start changing. Rub it on thick as you can. Now we sit and wait for the reaction of the sun and the alder juice to take place, and when it's about the shade that we want it, then we'll take it out of the sun and rinse it off.
To me, obtaining the culture and learning the traditions from Bruce, that's wealth. It has made me feel complete.
When I was in Vietnam, we were in a base camp and they were actually cooking real turkey. And the smell of the turkey and the sage stuffing took me away from that country, away from that war, to my home, even though it was just for a brief moment. And I remembered at that moment one of my elders saying, we burn this sacred smell when we teach you, so that when you smell the smell again, it brings you all the experiences back. I woke up that part of me about the teaching of the tree people and the fragrance of the forest.
My name is Elise Krohn and I'm an herbalist. Today we are making incense. This is all Northwest stuff that I've gathered, and With incense, anything that's aromatic you can use to make an incense. So some of the things I would think of immediately would be resins from trees. Working with Bruce, it's such an honor.
That's a happy one.
It really is. And I have learned so much from Bruce because he does have such a sense of the plants here.
What we're going to do today is make our own incense with things that Elise has gathered.
One of my favorites that I just discovered, something called black diamond willow fungus, and it's a mushroom that grows on old growth willow trees. And so I brought some and gave it to Bruce, and he said, oh, I've been using that for centuries.
This is a neutralizer for unharmonious feelings mentally aimed towards you. It was used to ward off negative thoughts.
Bruce, do you know silver sage? It has a really nice kind of cool scent when it burns. It's calming and
Almost subtly mint-like.
yeah, it is. Another one that I wanted to talk about is rose. This is the rose essential oil that I'll pass around, and it's such a beautiful fragrance.
As Native Americans, we use the rose branch on our cradle boards to ward off things concerning the dead. Let's have fun.
This smells so good.
I feel so useful.
I feel like Martha Stewart.
I want to name my variety Husky.
That's great. Husky, the manly incense.
Oh, that's a nice scent.
Yeah, it's so different. Yeah,
It's light.
it is.
I like that.
Wow, you can
It
really smell the
is.
sage in it.
Then the other one.
Oops. Yeah, we can. What I hear Bruce saying is that there's no time. The planet is in a critical point, and we as human beings don't really know how to take care of it. And I think that Bruce feels the importance of the fact that he might have some knowledge that would help to bring us back into balance.
The very ancient trees played a significant part in our spiritual well-being. There might be a tree where our father, our grandfather, our great-grandfather, our great-great-grandfather, they would go to this tree in times of mourning, in times of turmoil, and through the spiritual embrace of that tree, regain their balance. The trees remember every experience they've had since they sprouted. And they implanted this belief that these trees could remember and retain knowledge for us.
We're too encumbered with doubt. If we looked at the teachings of the tree people, you know, it'd be nice if all of a sudden we walked out there into the ancient rainforest and the tree suddenly moves its limb, embraces you, and talks and whispers in your ear the specifics that you need to understand. It's not always so direct. I'm Michael Paver from the Skokomish Indian Reservation. I'm one of the principal apprentices of Sobier, Bruce Miller. I've been taught by Sobier that the communication between humans and the tree people doesn't take place in the form of the language like I'm speaking now.
My first apprentice was Chip Cade, my nephew Mike Pavel. And he was about 15 when I struck a deal with him, sort of. I said, if you go on to school and get your PhD, I'll give you everything I have.
Now, I argue that the teachings of my ancestors, as I've gained them from Sobier, are applicable now as they were during the signing of the treaties. Currently, I'm visiting the faculty at Evergreen State College. Little did I know how challenging it would be, because you'd have to really understand what it means to commit to two widely divergent forms of education. This is the reality, with the same kind of reality that the tree people faced when they were charged with holding the land together.
Their teaching was, if the earth was to remain in harmony, then we would be living like the trees. A multitude of nations living side by side with a common goal, the preservation of the earth that we live on. So trees were our first teachers.
And that's what we're just trying to do. As humans, pick up on these lessons as best we can. All right, give yourself a applause. Let's go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes. Let's come back. Christine's going to give us some more detail. Nice job, everybody.
When the leaves hit the ground, to our ancient spirit, it's like thunder. And that awakens that part of our spirit. And it's a time of returning. It's a time of enjoying the harvest. It's a time that the major schools of salmon return. Our ancestors returned back to their permanent winter villages at this time, and they celebrated with a feast.
Well, during the first food ceremony, you gather the four-legged, you gather the fish, you gather the berries, and you gather the roots.
We gather the huckleberries just to give it thanks. And as we're cutting all these, we also thank the trees for it. We're not just chopping them down to chop them, we're giving them thanks.
You honor all of those things, all of those different foods in the first food ceremony to ensure that there will be an abundance, that they're not forgotten.
I dug this canvas, and it's hard work. This took us digging 3 hours, I think.
It is a lot of work. At times I go to work so I can rest. I'm serious. It's, you know, it's late nights, canning, preparing the roots, just all sorts of different stuff that goes on that needs to be done, preparing for the winter. I'm finally getting it. Took 35 years to get.
You know the most important part when you're in here? Cook. A nice, clean, good heart. You can't think anything negative or bad, ever.
Oh, we never know what's going to happen till the last minute. How much food's going to be here? How many people are going to show up?
We're going to start with the water.
It's good to see you.
Hello, how are you?
So the first thing to be served is salmon. Christine, you're going to dish the salmon.
The camera people are here, huh?
The next thing is deer. Jackie, you're going to serve the deer.
Hi, Koki.
Hey, Bruce.
Good to see you. Get up in the goddamn seat of honor. Oh, I'm sorry.
I love your...
I meant that in a spiritual way, of course.
The next thing is clams. Red Wolf, you're gonna do clams. Before they sit down.
We can just get them ready.
Okay, let's do it now?
Yeah.
Okay. When you serve this, you do a little prayer, however you choose to do it. Clean yourself out, get all good thoughts.
All right, there you go.
Because it's medicine for everybody's out. Just like when you're cooking, same thing.
OCM, CIA, ISF, Squalin, CM. Friends and relatives, it is a good day to be here. For the foods we are honoring today are the foods that our family here has gathered and prepared in a way for our people to make it through the winter. This day is our Thanksgiving. And I want to thank you for being here and honoring us with your presence. Osiem.
We need more tables.
First food ceremony is out of this world beautiful. Each food is individually honored and discussed.
In earlier times, one of the predominant food ceremonies for the Skokomish people was the first elk ceremony. That is where the first elk of the fall season would be ritually honored. When I heard that Bruce Miller had revived a kind of first food ceremony, I thought this is yet another piece of this renaissance that's going on.
Oh, we need more silverware, probably up on the table.
Soviet asked me to speak about recognizing the earth, the good earth.
I'm so grateful to Subier that he had the capacity to learn from his own people what needs to be done to remind everyone that has been invited here the way we, as the first people, need to continue to try to teach our young people who are able to listen.
When you become an elder, you should make an imprint on young people's lives. So if you young people that are under 40, if you have somebody that'll talk to you, you take the time to listen. Even if they're getting after you or correcting you, you listen. Because one day, that person is not going to be here.
You might wonder what it is to see all your teachers disappear. It's like a forest standing healthy, and we look at it through time lapse, and there's a few trees gone, and then suddenly a third of them are gone and half of them are gone until we finally see one tree left for the birds to nest in. The things that you relied on for your knowledge are simply gone. And then the realization that I've become this forest, and I better ensure that my experiences are passed along. The doctor figures I probably was a diabetic for 15 years before I was ever treated. If I had known about it, could probably have been in better health than I am now. Maybe I'm not as careful as I should be, but it has awakened me to the importance of ensuring that I have reciprocants for what I have to share. So I may be gone, but my breath is still here. We agreed to do these mats, which will belong to a public environmental center. And I thought this is a good place for these mats to live. What could be nicer than to have some of the children who go to this center to learn participate in the making of these mats. So we're going to take a piece of bark and have a couple of you split it, and we're going to see how much that we can actually use for the mat and how much we set aside for other projects, because we never throw anything away. There's a significance that we connect with the concept of umbilical. Right there is fine. That we call Chaychanitin. And that's the significance of a teaching that's carried from one generation to the next by the living breath. Our human tree rings then overlap. Now I'm going to do this myself because if you don't do it right, we lose a lot of bark and connect together to carry on the continuity of these readings of time. It's getting away from there a little bit, so we gotta adjust by leaning that way.
It's a whole lot more work than I thought it was. I thought you just peeled the bark off the trees and then we wove it, but it's a lot more.
What does the bark do? It's sort of slithered. So we gotta pull it over this way. When you have intimate participation, then you have a memory as long as you live on this earth. I was there, I participated, and you take your children and grandchildren there and say, there it is. I helped with this. What could be more meaningful than that? Our time of great holiness was the winter months. It was the time our spirit awoken. It was the time where our melancholy was placated with the singing of our spirit songs. We always looked as children at the emergence of winter as now it's time to hear all the stories. We just hear things better in the crispness of winter.
Are we in Virginia?
Yes, sir. We're in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Really?
And what is this?
It's Key Bridge Marriott.
Oh, is this where we're staying?
Yep. Right on.
As a master teacher, Bruce has a number of apprentices.
I'm gonna go bless the room now.
And these apprentices will in turn teach other people. And so I'm very optimistic about the future of Coast Salish art, especially in the Puget Sound, whereas 10 years ago or so, I was not.
It's a beautiful thing for me to see what I consider the souls of our culture.
His life is not an ordinary life. He fully engages with the hard parts and incorporates them in continuing with his life. If one's still alive, we have our life to live.
He shares. This is what makes him a good teacher in my estimation, because he has such a huge, huge amount of information that he can share for years and never run out of things to share.
Our next recipient of a National Heritage Fellowship, Subiai, also known by his English name of Gerald B. Miller, is one of those special bearers of culture for the Skokomish people.
Well, Bruce, in his teachings, helps us to become aware what are your roots. I think people start thinking about their own history, their own family, their own place in the world. And this is something that has been lost for many people.
A nurse log. It's a tree that's fallen. It's covered with moss, it's covered with lichens, and eventually new life evolves from this tree. As it lays there and nature changes the structure of it, the children that grow from it take that knowledge and bring it back to life. Some of the people that I associate with ask me, why didn't you teach me that? And I say, well, why didn't you come to learn? Because I've always made it plain I will teach whoever comes to learn.